Sticking it out. Sorry, sorry.
Wow!
In opening opposition, we fought for a Western involvement to be more diplomatic, not invasive. The question of this debate is not about whether or not Western presence is good, but how does that presence should materialize and to what extent the insertion of power should manifest. We defend a world when the Western countries, be it NATO, US, whoever, to use proxies. That means we want to supply weapons. Strategies are up to them. How they will allocate this, up to them. They might want to have proposals or whatever, but we're just more on the providing logistics part. So who are the targets of this proxies? We're going to target opposition parties of Sahel, those who are not part of the junta militaries, because we must assume that there are at least some fractions of parties that existed before this junta military rose to power. Maybe they have small presence, but they're still sizable enough to create organically built troops or even freedom fighters. These are probably parties that consist of just hundreds of people, but still have enough power in the grassroots, or at least in the bigger cities that are quite more progressive and perhaps not too keen with the junta military power. We're going to also encourage trade deals and encourage good governance. We will tell them, this is the deals that you can have. These are the type of governance and also democratic values later. These are the democratic values that you can expect later on once you rebuild the nation, but we're not going to force them that, okay, this is the prerequisite for you to accept our help or whatever. We're just going to insert the good governance type of ideas to them. So we're going to use proxies. That's how we're going to differentiate ourselves in all. And we're not held stance here because we've told you that Western countries is either way the option. The question is not about should they exist or not, but how should they materialize their power in the case of Sahel. Yes.
So assuming that one of the oppositions to the junta are the insurgents related to ISIS and Al-Qaeda, you're also going to supply weapons to them?
Not really. I feel like we will have much more options than that. I feel like, opposition are not just one, guys. I think in the country, or at least region as big as that, there's no way your option is just junta militaries and then insurgents. You should have someone in the middle that is, perhaps they have one or two members that are affiliated with ISIS or whatever. But the rest of the 98% remaining of those party members are I don't know, freedom fighters perhaps. We're just telling you, we're just pushing you that these alternatives are feasible. Two arguments then. One, talking about how historically aggressive inflation has failed and therefore we should never repeat it again, no matter how, to make this conflict grow better. But second of all, also about why soft presence is enough, or at least to curb down to curb down the instability, the insurgents, and also junta military. We're going to tell you that it's going to work, it's going to manifest regardless. Number one, how historically aggressive invasion led by the Western has always failed. Two things. One, many people have always hated US military presence because of the instability they have historically caused in Israel-Palestine conflict, in Iran-Iraq war, and they don't want to have the same destruction ever happen in their own hometown. That means the nature of Western countries being physically destructive is what they hate. They don't necessarily hate the ideas of values. They don't necessarily hate, the idea of external or foreign countries providing aid or help towards them so they can fight this, super tyranny. But they just hate the idea of it being invasive. But how does this invasive look like, right? It looks like regular drone attacks, demarking your territory and also your enemy's territory, dismantling all the junta governments that in the end will cause so much civilizations being destruction and also so much civil casualties. Because in invasions, these things are not, you cannot even avoid these things, and the blood is directly on your head. There's a legitimate proof that these kids are being killed by the US troops, for example. But it's different with proxies, right? The blame is not directly on you. You're just supplying, you're at least just supplying the weaponry. You at least just told them how the trade deals is going to work. So you're not going to be as aggressive, so people are keen to sympathize on that. But second of all, there's also presence of US leaving Afghanistan after decades of destroying their civilization and also infrastructure. It shows that it gives a message that your presence is not only destructive, it's short-term, you're going to leave us once we no longer benefit you at all. So this you also promise the interpreters of Afghanis locals the visa to US. These are the things that the locals hit, and therefore you will not have enough political morale or also political capital to advance this attempt to, at least stabilize Sahel region back. We need a president that doesn't traumatize the grassroots, but also put hope on the dying opposition party that Sahel already has. So how does this look like? One, when we just give them, at least the military logistics necessary without having to invade them directly, we can still provide them access to resources that are critical, like weapons, tanks, or even some military training. But that's all. But second of all, we provide them deals, like trade deals, with tangible return on investment. Trade deals that literally put food on the table and allow them to go to school, that allow them to have jobs. Because economy is the most glaring harm of junta military, and this is what makes you a more promising, at least looks more promising to the people. How does junta military regime look like? It looks so isolationist. You got lots of tariffs being imposed. You're sanctioned. You like lots of jobs. You like electricity, no food, because all the imports and exports are being halted. I think when you can you can bypass this through the opposition party and promise to socialize this to the people, it gives them hope. It gives them realization like, hey, well, actually democratic regimes are not so bad. At least it provides me job and electricity to further my life. So that proves you number one. But number two, how that soft presence is enough. Because one, we put a precedence of non-destructive presence which draws further sympathy from people to democratic Western values. But second of all, this is more likely to matters and be sustainable in the long run. We're talking about like 5 to 10 years of time frame, because one, Trump isolationist administration can still approve this to some extent because you don't exhaust as much federal budgets. You don't build military bases. You don't deploy thousands of troops, just hundreds of trainers. You have more bipartisan Congress approval because you can reframe this as a peace mission, and your attempt to stabilize that a nation as opposed to like having another invasion. Third of all, it's also a sustainable policy and not like these nations, these Western nations, NATO, Europe, whoever, they will not pull out after 3 to 5 years because it's not going to be prone to political turbulence or let's say in 3 or 5 years a new candidate rise or like a new president rise. They will not strip this away simply because they want to erase the legacy of the previous administrations, because this doesn't seem to be as harmful as a literal invasion that can be an unpromising